At this stage, it feels like some Pokemon cards are getting huge price tags, but some feel a little bit undeserved. You know, there's other Pokemon cards that just barely anyone talks about, though they feel they should be worth so much more in price. And that's why within this video, I'll be going over the 8 Pokemon cards that are undervalued based on their artwork, rarity, and where they currently sit in the market. I mean, it's no secret that we're currently living in the wildest era for Pokemon collecting ever, and that's why finding these hidden gems is so important. Though to kick off this list, it is the Mewtwo, or formerly known as the Shining Legends Mewtwo from 2017. Now, I know the price point is pretty high at the moment, but in terms of how rare this card is, and when comparing it to the recent Team Rocket's Mewtwo, this feels so heavily undervalued in a near mint version. And I mean, Team Rocket's Mewtwo is essentially brand new, and the Mewtwo is getting close to being a 10-year-old card. So the price differences in near mint raw copies shouldn't be anywhere near this close. I mean, Shining Legends released back in 2017, and I mean, even though buyers' confidence from buying cards from 2017 when they're listed in near mint is a little bit low, it still feels that this particular card should be worth so much more based on its rarity and how important Mewtwo is in the market. I mean, in a previous video, I spoke about the 10 Pokemon which are great cards to purchase because, you know, the Pokemon that are always featured on this card usually perform well, and Mewtwo is of course one of them. I mean, it has such a long-standing legacy in the franchise. It is such a well-known Pokemon, so the fact that we have a top Mewtwo chase card from 2017 and it's pretty much on the same level as a brand new Mewtwo chase card is a little bit strange, and I think that this card in particular is undervalued in terms of the current market. Now, moving on to the next card, which feels it should be worth a lot more, is Komiya's Galarian Slowking V alternate art from Chilling Reign. I mean, what an awesome artwork, and this card looks insane, and it's so rare to pull, and honestly, the price feels oddly underpriced in terms of what you receive and just how rare it actually is. Now, it's really interesting because the illustrator Komiya, who actually created this Galarian Slowking, is a very good illustrator, and I mean, some of the fan favorites, the Drowsy and Baxcalibur as well. And you know, actually earlier this year, Komiya actually had a huge market buyout where all people started purchasing his artworks, and of course that created a big hype wave around the illustrator. Though I mean, in terms of Chilling Reign being such an older set, I think this card in particular is a little bit undervalued in comparison to a lot of other cards. I mean, there's a lot of current illustration rares that released in the Scarlet and Violet era that are exceeding this card's price point, and when I look at the artwork and I look how rare it is, especially how difficult the pull rates are, I think this card just feels like it should be worth a lot more. Now, moving on to the next card on this list, it is the Erikas Invitation Special Illustration Rare from Pokemon 151. Now, I'll never forget when Pokemon 151 released, how excited everyone was for this card in particular, though honestly, as the years have gone on, it's felt a little bit forgotten, but I feel this artwork is gorgeous. So, you know, I'm really wondering where this card's gonna go in the future because it definitely will have a hard time competing with any of the OG 1-5 Pokemon within the set. But you know what's really interesting about this card? This is a special illustration rare, and nearly every illustration rare in Pokemon 151 is more expensive than this card, so maybe it is a little bit undervalued at this stage. Now, like I said, when this card released, a lot of people saw Erikas Invitation and said, wow, it's such an amazing artwork, wow, it's such a cool illustration, and especially now as we're entering 2026, this card has become a pretty affordable special illustration rare. I do know that early 2023, we had a lot of hype around Japanese female trainer cards. Now, a little bit of that hype did spill into the English TCG, and if you guys do remember that the Miriam special illustration rare from Scarlet and Violet base, along with the Iono special illustration rare from Paldea Evolved, were very hyped, right? But when this card was about to come out, a lot of people were also expecting, wow, it's going to be super expensive, and that's why there was a lot of hype around this card in particular on its release. Though in terms of the artwork and how cool this card is, I do feel it should be worth a little bit more than what it's currently worth in the market right now. Though moving next onto the list for cards that feel they should be worth a lot more is actually a lot of the V alternate arts from Sword and Shield. Now, I'm not talking about the big winners here, like, you know, the Eeveelutions or Arceus or Charizard. I'm talking cards like Greedent V, Luminion, Genesect, and the like. For how rare Sword and Shield alternate arts are, they definitely feel they should be worth more. It's kind of interesting because the Scarlet and Violet era, like when it started, a lot of people looked back at Sword and Shield and said, hey, look, no Scarlet and Violet era card is even competing with Sword and Shield prices. You know, Sword and Shield's where it's at. But now when you look at Scarlet and Violet, it's almost done like a big backflip where it's the opposite. You've got so many illustration rares that I feel are overvalued. And then when you look at the V alternate arts from Sword and Shield, they feel so undervalued. Don't forget how rare Sword and Shield V alternate art cards were to pull. And even though some of these Pokemon aren't that popular, it is a little bit confusing when you can see cards, like Seismitoad, even though it is a Shinji Kanda artwork, the fact that it's getting those kind of crazy prices for a Pokemon that's not that popular. But then when you look at cards like Celebi V, which is a very popular Pokemon, it's going to be really cool to see how the Sword and Shield era performs over the very long term. But a lot of these alt art cards from the Sword and Shield era do feel like they should be worth a little bit more. Now, while it's great spotting undervalued cards, there's actually one thing you should never undervalue, and that is your skincare. And that's why I'm super proud to have partnered with Geology to bring you this sponsored video. Now, Geology is a 41-time award-winning skincare, hair, and body brand and have received over 10,000 5-star reviews. Why Geology is perfect for someone who's never tried a skincare routine is because every product clearly shows you the order of when to use it. So because I deal with dry skin along with having very sensitive skin, I was recommended a bunch of products which are all fragrance free. I start my routine with the sensitive face wash, and then I apply the eye cream under my eyes, and this helps remove any puffiness. I then apply the moisturizing morning cream, and this really helps hydrate my skin. At the end of the day, I reuse the sensitive face wash, and then I apply the night cream. This is an overnight cream which helps lock in the hydration while I sleep. Now, if you want to use any of these products, Geology is offering a free month trial this October. Feel free to use my link and code and grab 100% off your personalized skincare trial set. Plus, you'll get a free gift plus up to 50% off add-ons. All the promo codes and details are within the video's description. A huge thanks to Geology for sponsoring today's video and supporting the channel. Now let's get back into it. Now moving on to number 4 on this list, for cards that feel they should be worth a little bit more than they currently are, it's the Eevee from Twilight Masquerade. Now, Evolving Skies changed the way we see Eevee along with all the evolutions, and I'm very grateful for Evolving Skies because we were kind of stuck in this Charizard or, major legendary Pokemon hype phase. In fact, when Evolving Skies released, the community was adamant that it would be Rayquaza as the main chase, but that changed drastically as the evolutions all took over. But now looking at this Eevee from Twilight Masquerade, it's a super awesome artwork, and it kind of feels it should be worth more than what it currently is, especially when we look at other popular illustration rares. I mean, fair enough, when we look at the Groudon from Paradox Rift, that's a box legendary Pokemon, that makes sense for its price point. But a card that I always felt was on the same playing field as this Eevee was honestly the Magikarp illustration rare, because they're both Generation 1 Pokemon and they're both very iconic Pokemon from Generation 1. Now, even though the Magikarp's artwork is far more interesting than the Eevee as well, I do feel that the big price difference between these two has gotten really out of control considering how awesome Eevee is as a Pokemon and the fact that it is a Generation 1 classic. Now, I don't think the Eevee should go anywhere near the Magikarp's price point, but in terms of the price differences, they're a little bit strange considering they're both illustration rares. It's going to be interesting to see where Eevee goes in the future, this card in particular. But in terms of cards that are a little bit undervalued in the current market relative to everything else, I think this Eevee feels like it should be worth more than it currently is. Though moving on to the next Pokemon card on this list, it is the Iron Crown Special Illustration Rare from Temporal Forces. This card was once the top chase card of Scarlet and Violet, and now it's literally one of the most forgotten special illustration rares, with even Raging Bolt from the same set overtaking it. I think what's even more crazy is that Temporal Forces has some of the hardest pull rates, and the chance to pull this card is 1 in 855 packs. That's definitely on the harder side in comparison to a lot of other cards, right? Because for comparison, the chance to pull the Charizard from Pokemon 151 is around 1 in 225 packs. It's kind of wild because when the Iron Crown released, a lot of people, you probably won't believe this, but they were actually comparing it to Moonbryon because the Iron Crown also had a moon in the background, and they're like, wow, have we found the next Moonbryon for this generation? That's actually what people thought when this card released. It was very hyped, especially when it came out. As time's gone on, like I said, it is a forgotten special illustration rare. And now when I'm looking back at this card and I'm kind of looking how the market's kind of gone and you've had all these amazing artworks, this card doesn't look as impressive as it once does. And especially, when you look at all the special illustration rares from, Destined Rivals and Prismatic Evolutions, it's definitely taken a few steps backwards. But, given how hard it is to pull and how awesome this card once was for early Scarlet and Violet era days, it definitely feels this card should be worth more than what it currently is. Now, moving on to the next Pokemon card that just feels it should be worth a little bit more is the Japanese Scarlet and Violet Pikachu promo. Now, just to be clear, this is the Japanese version, not to be confused with the Paldea Evolved promo, but it also has a very unique Scarlet and Violet stamp on the card, which separates it from these other versions. So this card is actually the first ever official card for the Scarlet and Violet era, and the only way to obtain this Pokemon card was in Japan by pre-ordering the Scarlet and Violet video games. I mean, given the fact a few years have passed, this one does tend to feel a little bit undervalued, and it feels it should be worth a bit more. I mean, it is the first card from the whole era, and of course, the fact that you had to get it in such a cool way does make it interesting. I remember I was actually considering at the time if I could play my Scarlet and Violet video game in English if I pre-ordered it from Amazon Japan, because I saw that this was a card that you get and you receive as a pre-order bonus. And I was really considering that, but then I kind of thought, oh, if I want to play online and I want to download DLCs later, I won't actually be able to do that. So I didn't actually pre-order this from Japan, and I just purchased this card myself afterwards. But given the fact that it is a bit of a classic Pokemon, it definitely feels undervalued. Though moving on to the final spot on this list, it is the Rainbow Rare Japanese Lucario VSTAR promo. Now, I know you're probably looking at that price tag and thinking, dude, Phil has just lost it. How is this card undervalued? But honestly, in terms of how rare this card actually is, it kind of is. This Lucario is one of the rarest modern Japanese Pokemon cards in existence. And that all comes down to how you have to obtain this card. Basically how it works, this Lucario promo was only given out to the winners of specific tournaments in Japan back in 2022. Now, this wasn't a participation prize, this card was only given to the winners. Now, to be fair, there were a lot of these tournaments across Japan, though given the fact that there were only a winner's prize, along with the fact it was before the whole Pokemon boom, this still feels crazily undervalued. Now, another little cool thing about this card is that it's the only Rainbow Rare Lucario for Sword and Shield, as the English TCG didn't get this version at all, and Rainbow Rares are also discontinued. I mean, the only reason that this card hasn't shot up so much in price is because the community doesn't really desire Rainbow Rares, and overall, they're not that popular. I mean, I dare say if this was the Lucario VSTAR artwork from Crown Zenith, or an artwork that's similar to the recent Mega Lucario Special Illustration Rare, we'd be having a very different discussion about this card. But nonetheless, this does feel it should be worth way more considering how unique it is. And I mean, I really love when seeing these unique Pokemon cards because, you know, it's always awesome seeing cards that are genuinely rare. Though, you know, if you did enjoy this video, I do have another 10 Pokemon cards to check out right in this video here that's appearing on screen. Once again, a big shout out to Geology for sponsoring today's video. You can find all the details of Geology in the video's description. And as always, click the video to learn more about these 10 Pokemon cards. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.